Welcome, everybody. One more week in the Touch Tank podcast. Today, it's a pleasure to carry out this interview with Daniel Greenberg. So, Daniel, it's a Chicago fan, diehard fan. So, he follows all Chicago sports related, like the Chicago Bulls, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Chicago Bears, the Chicago White Sox, the Chicago Cubs. You can follow him at Chi Sport Updates. His name is Daniel Greenberg. It was a pleasure to speak with him. I hope you enjoyed this interview with him. He's been talking to me about what the Chicago fans are, how the future looks like for the Chicago fan base and the different franchises. And I hope you enjoyed this interview. It was a pleasure for me to speak from a fan that was born in Chicago. And yeah, let me know your thoughts. And without further ado, I will leave you with Daniel Greenberg. So this is Touch Tank. If you like this content, follow me at Touch Tank Zone. And I will see you in my next interview. Daniel Greenberg, Chicago diehard fan. Hi, everyone. Once again here in Touch Tank. Today we have a special guest from Chicago, Daniel Greenberg. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. Welcome.
So Daniel Greenberg, he's the author of a famous Twitter account with roughly 80K followers right now. You can follow him at Chi Sport Updates. So everything related to Chicago sports updates. Correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, but I believe you work in the Chicago Blackhawks, or used to be, or you're currently working there.
Yeah, I mean, I work in the sports industry, so I work for different Chicago sports teams, different like sports companies.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, so the first thing that I would like to know is, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about what you do in your Twitter account, or I mean in social networks in general?
Yeah.
And what do you do related to sports?
Yeah, so related to my social media, obviously, I have the Chicago sports account. It's just me running it. It's a one-man show. I started when I was in 2014. Growing that account, I actually had multiple accounts, like Bulls accounts, Blackhawks account, Bears accounts, Cubs accounts. And then I sold those accounts, and then I left this one. So this is my main account. Usually I cover Chicago sports news, updates and scores. Been doing that, like I said, since 2014. The followers have grown, as you said. Yeah, that's something I'm very passionate about, especially Chicago sports, something I really love. And yeah, I work for different sports companies, do everything sports related just because I love sports a lot.
Yeah, that's good. We shared that passion. Yeah, sports, it's a very important part of my life. And since I live in the US, I noticed that the sport is quite a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing that I would like to ask you is, based on your experience in Chicago, like could you describe like the market share of the different sports that we currently have in the country?
Yeah,
how will you split those?
Yeah, so let me start off by saying Chicago sports fans are very different from other teams. Like the fan base here, it doesn't matter what it is, whatever sport, Chicago sports fans are very passionate. I would say Bears, the Chicago Bears are number one here. Bears fans are crazy, very passionate. They're number one. And then the Chicago Bulls are number two. And then you got the Chicago Cubs, the baseball team, and then it's the Blackhawks and the White Sox. But the Bears and Bulls are like neck and neck. Very passionate fan base. a very high standard. They want the best out of the team every single game. It doesn't matter if they are losing or winning. They want to see the team go out there and compete. So it's very high standards here, and we take it very seriously.
Yeah, it's interesting because back in Europe when I was living there, you were thinking like, okay, baseball is number one. I don't know, it's because of the movies, but since I moved here, you realize that American football is the king. It's like it's but very, very like the distance is significantly. It's like American football here, and then the second sport is here. So that's quite interesting. I mean, currently, I think that's changing, and in the international plan that the NFL it's put in place. So I think it's completely opposite, as you were aware, that the international games every single year, and a new country is involved. But it's interesting that the perception of the people out of the US, they think that baseball is like more followed, but not like that.
I mean, in the summertime, it is obviously because it's baseball season. But overall, I would say it's the Bears number one, and then the Bulls number two. But don't get me wrong, there are very passionate baseball fans in Chicago. But yeah, Bears fans are a different level.
Yeah, I experienced that. So I have the chance to go to several games of the Chicago Bears, and the environment, like the tailgate and everything, it's something very unique. So it's something that I never seen. So something that I wonder, based on your experience in the sports industry in Chicago. So it's interesting that Chicago used to be, and hopefully it will be in the future, like a winning city, like the Chicago. Yeah, we hope so. With Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bears in the past, like the Chicago Cubs, the Chicago Blackhawks as well. But it's been a while. I mean, as I said, only the Chicago Sky won recently WNBA. So how do you see the future about it?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Just because, so obviously a lot of the teams have rebuilded the last couple of years, are currently rebuilding. Now, for me, as a passionate sports fan, I hate the word rebuild. I think, especially in Chicago, teams should never rebuild just because it's a different market. Like I said, high standards. And for me, if a sports team in Chicago rebuilds, it's a slap in the face to the fan base. So for me right now, if you're looking at it, which team is closer for the future, like the next couple of years, I do say it's the Chicago Bears, just because this is a very important offseason for them, and they have the number one pick. They have the most money in the NFL to spend this offseason. But the Bulls are up there too. It depends on the direction they want to go, but they're competing. They're trying to get into the playoffs. And then you got the Cubs that are, they're starting to compete. They were in a rebuild last year. And then you got the White Sox that are also in that middle stage where they are trying to compete. They're trying to get the best out of their team, but they're also trying to get a little younger. And then you got the Blackhawks, who are completely just started their rebuild last season, or in this season too. So that will take a couple more years. But the Bears, I would say the Bears and the Bulls are kind of in that closest area to getting back up there.
Okay. So hopefully the next 2 to 5 years, hopefully we'll have another chance.
I hope so. I hope so. Hey. Or some excitement into the city, some playoff games, some, just to experiencing playoff games in whatever sports team and whatever sport is very important. So hopefully we get that back.
Hopefully. So it's interesting because I don't know if you're aware. I imagine you are aware that in Europe you have like relegation and things like that. So it's interesting how the Chicago Bears for example, this year, like the image of the fans celebrating how Houston was winning and giving them the number one draft. It was like celebrating the title, So that's something completely different that I'm used to experience in Europe, like celebrating being the worst team of the NFL, because that means that you are going to have a better team in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, at the same time, it's interesting because the league is more competitive and that gives equals opportunities, and more important, like more people are attracted to the sport, so that's
Yeah.
the reason behind the scenes. But I thought it was quite interesting the way that they were celebrating that specific moment.
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, I never celebrate my team loses. Like, I never want them to lose. I always go into games. It doesn't matter how bad you are. I always want you to win. But that last Bears game, I wanted them to lose just because the bigger picture of, hey, we can get the first overall pick and it could change the whole future of the organization, which I believe it will do this offseason. So I never go into games thinking that my team's going to lose except that one.
No, that makes sense. I mean, at that point, I
Yeah.
mean, it was the best decision and the best opportunity for the Chicago Bears. Hopefully, the general manager will do his job, and we'll see a great season for the Chicago Bears starting next year. So switching gears a little bit more, I was wondering if you could tell us like some personal experience with the different sports teams that you can tell us as a Chicago sports guy. So that would be very interesting to know, since you have been experienced more than me for sure.
Yeah, I would say for me, just the coolest part is like my social media followers, like growing how big my account is, and the more opportunities I get, like interviewing players, talking to like agents, talking to executives. That's really the coolest part. I always love talking to players. Some like for me, I don't want to talk to players like I'm interviewing them because I feel like they get interviewed so many times that I just talk to them like, hey, I'm just like want to talk to you. Let's see like what's going on. Like for example, Akeem Hicks, who played for the Chicago Bears. It was a really cool thing. Like I got to meet him. I got to talk to him several times. Jimmy Butler was a great experience. Talking to him, getting in contact with him sending me gifts, which was really cool. So just having experience with different players, especially just because of my social media following and just because of my experience working in the industry, that's been the best part. That's what I love the most, like getting that interaction.
Yeah, especially since I imagine that's a great experience because it's completely different. Because what I heard about like different people like yourself, like one thing is what you watch on TV,
Oh
and
yeah.
those personalities, and every single player has their own life. So
Yeah.
the way that you have the ability and the opportunity to approach them, I think in a pretty unique way. I think that has to be something very special. And yeah, happy
Oh
for
yeah.
you. Congratulations.
I would say obviously you're a Bulls fan and you know Jimmy Butler, but a lot of people don't like Jimmy Butler just because of his personality. But I met a lot of athletes. He's one of the nicest athletes, and he loves Chicago. Absolutely loves Chicago. He still has a place here in Chicago, so he loves the city. He loves the fan base. And he's one of the nicest athletes I've met.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah, I mean, it's true that personality wise, to the
Yeah,
press, it looks like a rude guy, but I
very different.
yeah, he's a cool guy. That's not the first time that I heard about it. Um, so related to, that we are close to the trade deadline, for especially for the NBA, now that we are talking about Chicago Bulls. So which are your predictions? So do you think something big is going to happen in Chicago, or because we are getting closer? Today's Tuesday.
Yeah.
Other than Kyrie Irving movement, nothing really happened. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, so I would say I do think they'll make a trade. I just think because Arturis is that kind of guy that there's not a lot of stuff that like all the stuff like the rumors about the Bulls, it's not coming from the Bulls. It's coming from other teams. the Bulls front office is very like secretive. They will not leak anything. They will wait until the last minute. So I expect Wednesday and Thursday to start ramping things up. I do think that they'll make a trade that will surprise a lot of people. Now, the surprise can be a bad surprise or it can be a good surprise, but I do think that they'll make a trade. I do like they do not want to rebuild. They do not want to go for that number one pick, just like the Bears did. They want to compete and they want to make the playoffs, and they believe once they can make to the playoffs, anything can happen, especially for this group. They are still hoping that Lonzo Ball can come back. Javonte Green is about 2 to 3 weeks away from coming back. But I do think that this trade deadline, you kind of start seeing it. You get a little crazy with the Kyrie Irving. I think that once we get to Thursday deadline, there's going to be a lot of surprises.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I don't know if you will agree with me on that on this, but I think since the moment they switched the format to the play-in, I think it completely changed the landscape of the NBA trade deadline, because more teams are involved on the race to make the playoffs, you know. So that's a big factor to consider, because if it's only the first 8 teams, I think way more teams will be like more willing to rebuild, as we were discussing. But now it's like, okay, I'm so close to the play-in. I don't want to get rid of all my best players, even though I know that even if I'm making the playoffs, maybe most likely first round, I'm going to be like out. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, that's a great point. I actually had that discussion with NBA agent a couple of days ago, how with the play-in, there's more buyers because more people believe that their team is in it and less sellers, which is tough because if you got more buyers and less sellers, less teams want to sell, more teams want to buy. But I would say it's a huge factor, especially where the Bulls are at right now, because they are, I believe, as of today, they are maybe a game and a half or 2 games back of the 6th seed, which if you're in the 6th seed, you know, things can change. But right now they're in the play-in spot. But I would say the biggest player, or like the biggest thing that I would look for the Bulls, is what are they going to do with Nikola Vucevic? And why I say that is, if you know that he's not going to be signing with you in the offseason because he's going to be a free agent, then I would trade him because I want something in return. Like I got to get something in return. But if I know that I'm going to sign him back to an extension, then I'll keep him. But if they don't trade him and he walks in free agency, then they made a horrible business decision because you got to get something back in return. The same thing with Kobe White. He's a little different. He's going to be a restricted free agent, but still, I believe that Kobe White's value right now is at an all-time high. He's playing fantastic basketball the last month, and if you can get something in return, you got to do it. So I would keep an eye on Vooch just because it's, you know, he's a fantastic player. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league and a guy that Bulls fans don't give enough respect to. He's a double-double machine, and I think, if you know that he's not coming back next season, you got to get something in return.
I agree. Just to wrap up the Chicago Bulls, what do you think about DeMar DeRozan? Do you think something could happen with him, or that's the kind of player that, because what we were discussing about making the playoffs, I mean, in my opinion, I think it wouldn't be smart to get rid of the DeRozan at this point, but I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I would say for DeMar DeRozan, he's not a guy that's going to like do a trade request. He's not going to want to leave. He's going to honor his contract. Yeah. So for me, if I'm the Bulls, the only way I trade him if I get a fantastic offer from another team. That's the thing. He's a very high value. He's a fantastic player. He's exceeded my expectation. I thought he was way too old. Can't move that around with that contract, but he's done really well for the team. So for me, I don't think there's any player that's untouchable that I'm not having a conversation about, but there's some players on the team that it's high value. You have to blow me away with your offer, and he's one of them.
Yeah, no, especially making the All-Star game.
Yep.
That was a surprise. I mean, nobody was talking about him. I mean, not a completely surprise, but I didn't think that he was going to make it. So that's a good surprise for the city of
Mhm.
Chicago. Switching gears to the Chicago Bears. So, which is the player that? So I imagine you have the opportunity to discuss with some of them, as you mentioned. So, which player is the one that surprised you the most on a personal level, similar to what you were saying about Jimmy Butler? So,
Mhm.
which one can you say like, oh, this guy, it's a phenomenal guy on a personal level?
Yeah, I would say obviously a lot of people are going to say Justin Fields just because he's the quarterback and fantastic player. But I would say for me is David Montgomery. I think that especially this past season, he opened up more. He used to be a little shy. He wouldn't say a lot. He would be like shy to talk to the media, talk to the public. But this past season, he really opened up. He had very honest conversations about his mental health, which was amazing for him to talk about. His personal life, what he's going through, having a baby. It's the best. So I think he's a very awesome guy, a fantastic player, fantastic running back, runs hard. Same as Jimmy Butler, he loves Chicago. He loves the fan base here. So I thought he was a player that really opened up this past season.
All right, yeah, good to know. Yeah, he he didn't have. I mean, he had bad luck in the past
Yeah.
with the injuries. Hopefully, he will be back again in a great shape
Yeah.
and for the shape of Chicago. So hopefully,
Yeah.
um, couple of things to wrap up the conversation today. So you know that I mean, soccer, football, as we know in Europe, it's huge. I noticed that in the last couple of years, it's like growing fast in the US. But in your opinion, like which is your perception about it? I mean, because I know it's not going to be a big sport in the US because
Mhm.
it's kind of tough, especially because I mean it used to be like that, and I mean, and still it is like the best players are not willing to come to the US only in the in the last years of
Yeah.
their career. So, which perception do you have about soccer in the US?
Yeah. So as someone like me who on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings watches the Premier League
Yeah,
and MLS here, I mean, I've been to a lot of Chicago Fire games. It is very different. Very different, like the mentality, the physicality, the the skills. MLS is way behind. The Premier League, I think, is the best league in the world for soccer. I do also think that La Liga is really good too. But MLS is behind. Chicago Fire, just the way they play soccer, it is just very slow compared to other leagues. I do think, like you said, it is getting more and more popular, which is great. But I think it's not where they want it to be. I think they have a long way to go. I think for me, I'm predicting in maybe 5 to 10 years is when you'll see it become like popular the way they wanted to be popular. But I don't think it'll ever be like the other leagues in the world.
yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, but I saw that a huge step in the US about it, and
Yeah,
especially in during the World Cup. I mean, as you're aware, like the 2022 100 most watched TV programs, I think two or three soccer games were on it. So
yeah,
that's something. I mean, even though it was the World Cup, but I think the some US games, they beat the record of all time in the
yeah.
viewership in the US. So that was kind of surprising for me, but that's cool.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, last question that I have for you. So let's say that someone that want to visit Chicago and it's passionate about the sport. So can you give us like some recommendation of what they can do? Like,
Yeah.
for 1 week. Yeah, what's the best scenario to face in Chicago for 1
So
week?
let me first start off with just podcasts because a lot of people are doing podcasts. I think it's awesome that people are doing podcasts. It's just the challenging part is doing it consistently and doing it every week and getting the podcast out there. Once you do that, it goes a long way. It's the same thing for my Twitter account. I got to post every single day. I got to make sure people know I'm active. I got to be up to the minute news like I have on my bio because if there's news that breaks right now, I want to be one of the first ones to post it on my social media. So I would say be consistent. Um, there's a lot of passionate fans out there, but you got to be more passionate than them. Get the content, a lot of content out there, and just do stuff that you're not comfortable with because it can go a long way. So the podcast is a great platform to post stuff on social media, to get stuff out there, to get guests. Just do even with no guests, just to talk about if there is a Bulls game that you just were so frustrated about and you just want to talk about it for 15, 20 minutes, post that content out there. I think that's the best content. That's the organic, authentic way. But I would say just always go after it. Network is a huge thing. Always network. So just get your name out there. That's the best thing.
Yeah, that's good to know. On a touristy aspect, so what do you recommend for someone that is visiting Chicago related to sports? So what would, if they only have 1 week?
Yeah, I would say definitely go to the sports games. It's the best. Get the pizza. Pizza is amazing. And I would say just like visit Chicago, just walk around in a downtown area. It's very different from other places in the world. But yeah. Oh, and I will also say if you are a sports fan and you visit Chicago, you should visit United Center for the Michael Jordan statue.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah.
A lot of people do that. It's a cool experience. But yeah, just walking around the city is always fantastic. Getting the food, just enjoying the downtown area is always a great time.
Yeah, I completely agree. As a Chicago citizen since 2017, as I said, so completely agree with you. Worth it to visit. So
yeah,
if you are planning to visit the US, Chicago, it's a great place to visit.
Yeah.
So thank you, Daniel, for your time. I wish you the best. Hopefully you will grow even more, and
thank you.
I hope you can continue doing what you're doing. You're very passionate about the sports, and hopefully we'll see you more with players and giving us news as you are currently doing. But thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
Take care. Bye.